Welcome back to Learning Matters. I'm your host, Doug Wooldridge, and this week we're going to do something a little different. I'm going to be the guest. So, without further ado, let's get to the interview. All right. I want to welcome my sister, Jessica Howell, to the podcast. She's going to ask me some questions today. So, without further ado, let's get started.
I'm so excited for this, Doug. I get to take over the mic. And before we dive in, I do want to give our listeners some insight that not only are we siblings, but we're actually twins. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious if anybody can guess which one of us is older. So we'll let you guys do that. And you let us know on social media.
That's a great question.
All right. So we're going to start off with a little softball, get you warmed up here.
Okay.
So I want to know, what is on your work from home playlist?
Ooh, that's a great question. So I do a lot of stuff with audio on the side. So I kind of like to keep any of my working hours like a little on the refreshing side of things. So I listen to a lot of explosions in the sky, like ambient type of music that doesn't have lyrics, so that I'm not like focusing in on the lyric side of things and just like kind of putting it on the background. So I'd say probably some explosions in the sky, a little Sigaros. Those are probably the top two. Maybe toss in some Sufjan Stevens if I want to get a little lyrics in there. But yeah.
Very nice. I'd say I'm similar in that way. It's a little difficult to be in focus mode with some lyrics going on. But I will say that we have a playlist that our innovators have contributed to on Spotify. So maybe, Doug, you can add some of your favorite tunes to that.
Yes.
And we'll link it here in the show notes.
Definitely. And any of our listeners, that is a public, if I remember correctly, it's a public playlist. So you can add your favorites there too. Yay.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So I'm going to toss in some questions that our team asked, and they're really interested in hearing your perspective on, specifically on your take on AI-generated voiceovers. Pros, cons, hot takes?
My hot take would be that it is still yet to cross over that uncanny valley, but it's getting really, really close. So when AI voiceover, and just as a little bit of a backstory, I've been doing voiceover recording for the last 7 years now with a slew of actors that I know in the Los Angeles area, the New York area, some from Kansas City. And so I've had a lot of experience working with real-life actors in the studio, working on projects for learning and development. And when AI first hit the scene, it was one of those things that you would listen to and you'd be like, man, this really just doesn't quite sound right. There's something about it that seems a little off. Now, I've done a couple of projects recently, though, using 11 Studios, which is a great option for any type of AI voiceover needs. And the difference now is that they offer things like speech-to-speech. Everything was text-to-speech for many, many years. And the trouble with text-to-speech is that you end up having a lot of mispronunciations, things that you wouldn't have in a studio environment with an actual actor. You'd be able to say, oh, let's redo that. But oftentimes for the text-to-speech thing, you're kind of just sitting there as the producer, just retyping in words over and over again on the script to try to get that speech to actually pronounce things the right way. A lot of issues with that is any type of names that aren't kind of that standard American name like Bob, John, Julie, things like Priya or Patel and those type of things, where it's a little bit more of a diverse name for it. So the text-to-speech wasn't able to quite capture exactly how to say those things. Now there's speech-to-speech. So one of the projects I did recently, while we were under an incredibly tight timeline, meant that I wasn't able to do a true casting call. I wasn't able to grab a bunch of different actors to give to the client to be like, hey, these could work for this role in particular. So we went to the AI realm, and the speech to speech allowed me to still be the actor while we utilized a couple of different options for the female or male options, as well as different accents, because it was for a client that's very much a global client. So I think within the last year or so, things have gotten a lot better as far as the options for AI. I would still always, if possible, work with live actors. I think it's very important to keep that true human quality to this type of work. In particular, there's a lot of good research out there on retention especially for training programs. And if you have folks that are listening to a training program and they're focused on the fact that the voice sounds a little off, they're not actually retaining what that training is. They're just sitting there being like, something sounds weird on this. And that can oftentimes take them out of the training. So, the goal is to have them engage the entire time. And if they're missing bits and pieces of that because the voice might not be there or it's saying things a little off, maybe the pronunciation is a little off, those are areas where you just can't gain that time back. So I would always say that we should use live voices when possible, but it is very interesting and exciting where AI has gotten to, at least in the last year or so. I never thought that I would be able to hear voices that sounded very true to an actual voice, and we're getting there. We're getting really close with that.
We're certainly on that pivotal point where, to your point, the quality's improving. But I like what you said about the importance of human connection. And we're so smart as consumers that we can tell when it's not quite authentic. And Eric spoke a lot about this in our recent demo with Training Industry on the power of generative AI, images specifically. But there's certainly some cost implications of live actors, live voice, and I know we talked about this in a recent blog post, so I'll make sure that we include it here in the show notes. Or Doug, if you could include that, that'd be great.
Can do.
There's a helpful little chart that gives you some budget and time considerations to consider, in addition to that human element. So staying on the AI train, Jessica Dinwiddie chatted in, and she wants to know specifically what are some of these cost considerations that we can keep in mind when we're exploring our options between human versus AI.
It's a big consideration because it's definitely going to be a little cheaper to do the AI side of things because you don't have to bring in a live actor to do it. However, I would always suggest to potential clients that they use that speech-to-speech function because it just takes a lot of the time out of sitting there, trying to reconfigure the script to work for the AI. So you really are still utilizing a live actor, but then I also don't have to sit there and work on the compression or the EQ, that side of things. Those things are already taken over by the actual AI itself. So a lot of it is just me or someone else who has access to the tools is able to get in there with the script, say it really quickly, and have the system push it out. So I would say it's definitely a cheaper option down the line, and I think it's a great option for projects that just have a timeline that's too quick. So we just got approval for the purchase order. We need to move this out now. We've got like maybe 2 weeks to put this together. I would say it's a great option for that. And also for any initiative that just doesn't quite have the budget, you have to be very considerate of where you want to put your time and energy into any type of project. And while having the best of the best voice actor come in and put their magic on tape is awesome, it is definitely nice to have. We're in a business where you want to get things done. You want to do it the right way, but you also got to do it the fast way because we live in a very fluid world here. So we got to move oftentimes at a lightning pace, and these are the type of considerations that you need to make when building out a project.
I remember talking with one of our team members on this when we were working on a video for our subscription learning service, and it was going to be an explainer video, and they had suggested AI in that case because in the way that we were piloting that program, and we knew that we were building this ship as we were flying it,
Right.
and we thought to ourselves, if at some point we want to come back to this video and edit it and change it, this is a good opportunity to save time and resources and budget on a project that may be either something that could be low visibility. It wasn't in that instance, but I'm giving another example of where it might make sense, or maybe a training initiative that's more of a one and done. You're not going to use that
Right.
that deliverable for more than one instance. So another consideration that you might explore when you're trying to decide between AI voices versus human voice.
Yeah, I think you got to be flexible within your approach. And a lot of times when I'm talking to instructional designers and stuff, they get these are their babies. This is something that you spend a lot of time putting together, and you want the best of the best for everything. But like I said, sometimes you just got to get the project done. You got to move it out, and you never know. Oftentimes, we have clients come back to us and go, "We're re-upping this training. We need to change some things. We've found some things out about it, and we want to do like the full, true human experience for this." And we take that and run with it.
Absolutely. It's definitely the gold standard when we have the timeline and the ability to do so. All right, so we're going to switch gears into the podcast space.
Okay.
And Debbie wants to know, how do we go about deciding on topics?
Ooh.
And what's our process for researching and preparing for an episode?
Whew. So topic-wise, a lot of it is based on content calendar that we create to really kind of lay out what our listeners are interested in and what are the things that they want to hear from. So we do quite a few polls and things on social media to pull some of that data from them to be like, okay, what are you interested in? Because that's what matters at the end of the day. It is all about the listener. It's not necessarily about what I find fun talking about, which is all of this as well, but what they most need to help them take their career to the next level. And so I think oftentimes also it is just about scheduling. So sometimes we'll move schedules around just because we're getting this guest in this day, and then we can get this podcast out then. But really, a lot of it is trying to develop content that is going to speak to our audience as a whole. And we know that learning and development is kind of a niche type of field, but there's so much more to that side of things. Like oftentimes our listeners are freelancers, so they are small business owners. So they want to hear about how to take their career to the next level, but also how to take their business to the next level. So we try to have a nice mix of that, like business prowess, the entrepreneur side of thing, as well as learning and development.
We absolutely do ask for feedback regularly. And on that note, if you're tuning in and there's a specific topic that you'd like for us to talk about, feel free to send it to us. You can email Doug directly, or you can give us a comment on social media, and we'll be sure to add it to our list. All right, the second half of that. What is your process for preparing for podcast episodes, or maybe your process for interviewing guests?
A lot of it is just research, looking at what they've done in their past, taking a look at their bios to see where they've come from. And then if they've also been on a couple of podcasts in the past, maybe listening to some of that just to kind of get a gauge of what all things they're interested in, as well as the things that they've done, so that we make sure that we're capturing some of that story of where they've come from, depending on the guest, and where they're going. And I think a lot of it is just looking at Google and LinkedIn and really just kind of nailing down who is this guest. Oftentimes for our internal side of things, when we bring on one of our employees for TTC, it's a little easier because I know most of these folks fairly well. But for the outside interviews, I really like to dig in and try to get an understanding of who they are as a person and where they've come from, and really trying to nail down what they're working towards, because everyone's got a story, and I want to make sure that that story is told, and I want to make sure that we get to capture it in a way that that there's no like necessarily curveballs or anything on questions, but questions that are digging into something a little deeper than maybe podcasts they've been on before or something like that. So there's a bunch of really great interviewers out there that I always think about in my head when I'm trying to put together questions and stuff, like Nardwar, who is a music interviewer. So he'll interview musicians from all genres and stuff, and somehow he just is always able to pull something from their past. They're like, how do you even know that? Who is your researchers? And I love the idea of just trying to know your guest before you bring them in, because you want them to feel as confident and comfortable as possible. And what helps that is the feeling that you already kind of know each other, like an old friend, that type of thing.
And you do such a wonderful job of that, of
Oh, shucks.
empowering those you're interviewing and having these conversations with, so it really feels like just a natural conversation that the listener's just tuning into. So I just want to summarize some of these great tips that you shared, because I think anyone can utilize these in their day-to-day work. So I'm imagining how you can have a more effective conversation with SMEs that you're working with or subject matter experts. And this was some good information that you shared. So just to recap that, you talked about the importance of doing your homework up front. So really getting out there and researching what the individual that you're talking with is passionate about. Listening in to any podcasts or interviews, or reading maybe any blog posts that they've published publicly, and diving deeper into some questions that maybe weren't asked or some perspectives that were not shared. I think that's a really good one to differentiate and go past that surface level.
Yeah, and kind of to piggyback on that, we talked in the latest episode with Nicole Whitney about how to really nail an interview. And it is just about being prepared. It is about having the questions ready up front, knowing who you're talking with, whether that's a new client or whether that's a subject matter expert. In this instance, really knowing that person and having the ability to have a quick connection to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success. Otherwise, you're just kind of shooting in the dark, and that can be that can cause a lot of anxiety, that can cause a lot of fear, and you don't need that walking into either an interview for a podcast or an interview for a potential client that you want to work for.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing. Here's a good one to kind of piggyback off on that. Debbie's curious on how you approach really bringing the best out of a guest or an interview. And this can be hard because it can at times feel like you're kind of pulling teeth, but you do it so naturally, so well, in such a conversational way that makes the guest feel comfortable. So any tips that you can share with our listeners?
I think a lot of it is just be yourself, you know? People feel most comfortable when you are comfortable with yourself. Like, I'm a bearded guy with very floofy hair and stuff, so I just kind of own that, and folks seem fairly comfortable with me to share things that they wouldn't normally share with others. I think a lot of that is just because what you really want to be able to do in this is listen. Like I said earlier, this is about these are people's stories. These are people's life that you're listening to, and that you want to get more intel out of. You want to get those meaty pieces of what they've done, how their career has been shifted into this very niche world of learning and development, and you want to make sure that they're able to open up. So being a good listener and being yourself is probably the top two things that I would say. You never want to try to put on a face. The last thing that I want to do is try to put on a personality that is not me for this podcast. While being upbeat and bright and bubbly is a nice add-on to this, sometimes you got to get a little deeper. Sometimes you got to put on that serious face because they're talking about something very serious. So I think a lot of podcasts that I listen to, that's one of the reasons that I listen to those podcasts is that the host is always themselves. And I think that's the big point.
Agreed. Switching this up a bit, I want to hear more about the type of equipment that you use.
Ooh.
So whether that's your studio equipment or maybe it's the post-production software that you use, how do you get such a high quality level of sound?
Well, that's a great question. I use quite a bit of gear. I'm lucky enough to have been working in the audio industry for the last 15 years. So I've got quite an accumulation of great gear to work with. The main software that I use would be Logic Pro, as well as Ableton. It just kind of depends on what processes I need to do for that audio. But I do a lot of work in Logic Pro. And then on the video side of things, both me and the video editor use Final Cut Pro, as well as a good portion of the Adobe suite. So Adobe Audition for any potential audio stuff that he needs to work on his end. And then also, what's the name of it? Can't remember the video side of things for Adobe. I'm mostly a Final Cut Pro user.
So Premiere?
Yes, Premiere. Thank you. And then for hardware, obviously I record here with the Shure SM7B microphone, but I do have quite an extensive mic cabinet for music side of things. But we also have a bunch of different outboard gear for hardware, an LA2A, a couple of 1176s. I'll use Pultec EQs, as well as SSL EQs, and a few mastering compressors for the end stage of everything. So making sure that all of the audio is mixed right so that you and I kind of sound on a similar level. And then I make sure that at the end of the day, we're at the proper level for all of our platforms that we release everything on to be at that loudness level for standardized for podcasts.
So a lot of tools at the trade, and maybe something we can do, Doug, is put together a little guide if y'all are interested in seeing some of this listed out in capture, record, post-production. Let us know if you'd be interested in that, and we can put it together.
Yeah, and I will say that you don't have to go all out like I'm going all out here to get great sound. You know, the best thing that you can do if you're looking to do a podcast, if you're looking to do some voiceover stuff, is have a decent room that you can record in. It's
good tip.
Quite a bit of acoustic treatment here in this room, but a lot of it is also utilizing a microphone like this, which is a dynamic microphone that isn't going to capture a lot of that room noise. So, first and foremost, you get good audio in, you're going to get good audio out.
Yeah, it takes me back to my podcasting days, and I would hole up in walk-in closet that I had in my previous condo, and it
Yes.
was perfect because it was protected sound-wise. And Doug, you could tell me the proper terms for this, but because it was filled with clothing, it absorbed all that excess
Yeah,
sound.
definitely.
And I chuckle because I think about those days where I would scrunch up in a little ball and
I'm going to be
record
honest.
away.
A lot of my voiceover actors have that exact same
Hmm.
setup in Los Angeles or New York, where it's like, okay, I need a quick place to record in. I'm going to
Yep.
put this mic here. I'm going to have all of my clothes just slightly pushed aside so I can fit the mic in, but everything's like I'm still hanging out with my winter coats here, uh, and and that works.
Yeah,
I I've put together a lot of studios over the years, and sometimes you just deal with the space that you're given. So I
that's
have
right.
definitely stood in a lot of closets over time recording vocals and singing into the coats is what I used to call it.
You make it work.
Yeah, yeah.
So Dana wants to know, Doug, how do you land the guests for our podcast?
Who? Um, that is a great question. A lot of it is catching someone when they're near their email. A lot of the folks that we bring in are very busy, so you really got to schedule that time properly. And to be honest, a lot of it too is having Debbie as an option for doing the first handshake for folks because she's been in this
Hmm.
industry for so long that she knows a lot of the top players and they know her. So having that as a resource is invaluable in my mind
Yes.
because it really does allow us to get some of these folks who are I would consider true leaders within the industry. And so some of it is that, some of it is luck, and a little bit of it too is just doing research on folks. And we have a lot of resources available to us with the speaker circuit for a lot of L&D conferences. Those keep getting bigger and bigger every year. So we'll look to see who's speaking at certain conferences, see if we can get them on the calendar, and then bring them in.
Hmm. Yeah. So, Debbie, you're referring to, for those who might not be aware that are listening, she's our CEO and founder, and she's been in the industry for over 25 years now. So, she's really cultivated those industry relationships over the years. And that's something that's really important to our culture and how we work with our team and our clients, and really being relationship focused. So, always pulling on those relationships first, and then seeing how we can get connected with colleagues of colleagues.
Hmm.
And we also take recommendations from our audience. So if there's someone that you're interested in hearing on the podcast,
Or if you're
let us know.
interested in joining the
Sure, if
podcast.
you're interested, yeah, absolutely. You can apply to be a featured guest on the podcast, and we'll drop a link in the show notes so you can raise your hand if you're interested in that.
Yeah, I'll have a conversation with anybody.
Absolutely. So, Doug, I want to know, what's something that you're passionate about that not many people know?
Well, I think my biggest, I think people know this, but it is still something that is, I started um, my career doing music and stuff like that and getting into audio and then working for TTC as well. But my biggest passion outside of work is definitely cooking and baking. uh, not really like baking cakes or anything. I bake a mean sourdough loaf. So especially when it's soup season, which in Colorado, which is where I'm at here, about 7,500 feet up in the air uh, in the North Range. Soup season lasts forever. So uh, as soon as it drops down to like 45 degrees, which is like early October until now, which is it is exactly 45 degrees out here in mid-May, it is soup season. So I get my sourdough on and bake a couple loaves every weekend, so that'll kind of last us through most of the week. Oftentimes, give it away to neighbors or
Mm.
friends in the area because you can only eat so much bread. But
I can contest to that, I tell you.
we do what we can. But yeah, I think my big passion is baking sourdough and finding meals that can go with it, as well as barbecue. I'm a big barbecue fan coming from Kansas City. So currently waiting on my offset smoker that I've been having built for the last couple of months to show up and really rein in this barbecue season. Hopefully
Mm.
starting soon. So yeah.
All right. Well, now that we're all hungry,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have to share your favorite recipes with us.
Ooh, okay. I've always said that we need to do like a TTC recipe book that we can showcase to our audience
How fun.
and to our network. So I think maybe we need to do that. But yeah, I'll tell you what. I'll put a link in the description to my go-to recipe for sourdough starter, and then folks
Ooh.
can start with that.
Oh, I'm going to be eyeing that. Yum. Can you describe a moment that you're especially proud of, whether that's in your personal or professional career?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Getting deep.
Yeah. You know what? I'm gonna say my wedding day. I love my wife dearly. She is upstairs, I believe, right now, making some delicious treats for us. And I think that was having all my friends there, having all of her friends there, our family, and being able to stand at the altar and look out on what was a absolutely gorgeous day in Lawrence, Kansas, and seeing all of our friends and family there. That was probably my proudest moment. I've done a lot of fun things with music and done some decent sized shows across the Midwest and West Coast and stuff like that. But I think that still takes the cake. So
Gonna get me emotional. I can concur on that one.
yeah,
It was a proud day for all of us. Welcome Emily officially into the family, which she has been for many years.
that's
And
right.
well, we're just never going to let her go. What's maybe a book or a movie that has had a profound impact on you and why?
The book and the movie would be the same. And I would say, well, the movie's name for it is Blade Runner. The book name is Do Electric Sheep Dream from Philip K. Dick. And I think it's just a really profound. It's a really profound story on the humanity within us all, even though the plot is basically a Blade Runner going after a bunch of androids who are not allowed on Earth but find their way back to Earth, and finding the humanity within within every aspect. A lot of what the book does that the movie doesn't really do is focus on the fact that the character really wants he wants a couple of different type of fake animals, but he wants a sheep or an ostrich or something like that. And being in such a fast-paced world like we are constantly in, finding those areas of where you get to touch true life, whether that's wildlife or whether that's scenic views or whether that is the person that you love, those are the important moments in life. While work is obviously important and continuing your success in your career is important, what I find most important to me at the end of the day is being able to go out on my porch and take a look at the mountains, take a look into the wildlife, and really soak that in for the time that I have here.
It's a good reminder for us all to focus on those priorities and make a conscious effort to turn work off, to turn the volume on our personal life up. Something that I'm working on, and always inspired by you, by your ability to prioritize those moments in nature, in realness.
Yeah.
And you do it so well, and it's easy too, I suppose, in a way, because you have such a beautiful backdrop.
Yes. When you're up here in the mountains and your closest neighbor is about an acre and a half or 2 acres away, you you do get to really embrace that, and that's something that well, I've lived in Los Angeles for 7 years before moving out here, and we still did what we could to go on hikes and stuff like that. But and I've lived in a lot of cities. I went to college in Chicago for a little bit, and you were in Chicago at the same
We were
time.
both there.
So, uh, living in big cities, while I've loved the idea of being in a big city, it's very fun. There's nothing like getting out into true nature, and I would highly suggest, even if you are in a big city, take at least a weekend away occasionally to get out, get back into nature.
Such an important part of your personal journey, and tapping into your creative side, which is so essential for really anyone, to take those moments to pause and have some white space. So I love this reminder. It's something that we can all focus in on more. Going back to voiceover work for a moment here, if you could give our clients one piece of advice or one thing to focus on regarding voiceovers, what would it be?
You can never help us pronounce things. You can never overshare on pronunciations. So whether that is acronyms, or whether that is just whatever the lingo is that is within your corporation, let us know. Just how do you say this word, and how would you like it to be said? Because oftentimes I'll look at a script, and usually I get them like the day before the recording. So I have a little bit of time to go back to either the writer or the subject matter expert to be like, hey, what is this acronym, and what does it mean? But yes, if you are a part of the script writing process, always share exactly how to pronounce everything, because that's always the biggest hang up, whether it's for the AI to pronounce or whether it's for an actual actor pronounce. We always love going into things being like, okay, we know exactly how to pronounce this. We're good to go, because then you can just read it. So that would be the biggest thing.
Yeah, you truly cannot over communicate enough.
Yes.
And always being clear with expectations too.
Yes.
What is your vision, and what do you see? How do you want it to come to fruition?
Yeah, because
And
this
that's
is
going to save us time on those pickups and
exactly.
kind of the back and forth.
And these are your characters that you're creating. Whether that's just a bank teller, that character still has a backstory, and you kind of want some of that in the actual recording. You want to get some of that vibe of this could be a real person, because you were training real people, and those people
Yes.
have stories. So really nailing down that script writing and making characters that are going to resonate with the folks that you're trying to train, that would be my second big goal for any clients.
Yes, context is key. I would say from my perspective and listening to a lot of scripts and a lot of voiceovers, I would focus in on writing to the most conversational tone possible.
Yep. Yeah, it's tough. It is a fine line to straddle, because you're trying to get so much information out to folks, because you want to set them up for success, but you want that information to be real too. You want it to feel real. So it takes a good script writer, which is why we love our writers here at TTC. They really take that into account when working on these type of things, because like I said, the people that you're training are the real folks that are going to deal with these situations.
Absolutely. All right, let's go back to the podcast.
Yes.
We pretty recently launched this new project. So, what were some of your learning lessons
Ooh.
in the process of launching this project out into the world?
Too many to name, but I think the biggest one is preparation. You especially for the recording process. We can do a lot of fun things behind the scenes to make things work in the final cut, but being prepared for the actual interview, being prepared for even sometimes folks will have us put together like a pre-production meeting. So being prepared at that point to give the person the right information as quick as possible, make them feel comfortable, get them into that vibe that they're going to delve into once they actually come in for the recording. So that was probably the biggest lesson. And also just having patience with myself and all the folks that are working behind the scenes, that this is a moving train and we are all going to the same destination, and that destination is coming out with a good product. So just, we want to shoot for the moon and all of this stuff. Well, as long as you get to the clouds, you're good. You like, it's not really a minimum viable product, but it is, you got to, at the end of the day, you got to put out a show every week. So make sure that you have as much time beforehand to prepare, but also be fluid with things. And sometimes we'll change up the release schedule because we want to make sure that this certain guest has enough time on their side to do promotion as well for whatever it is that they're working on. So having that fluidity and being kind of on our toes all the time for this to make sure that not only we're making a good product, but the product is relevant and the timing works out so that if we have a guest on that is specifically promoting something in the near future, that we give them the leeway to do that. So.
And you touched on this a little bit. I was chuckling internally. We had some of that rub together, you and I, in prioritizing the quality, but also prioritizing our deadline. And this segues me perfectly into my next question. So we said at the top of the show that you and I are brother and sister. We also happen to be related to our CEO and founder. She's
That's
our
right.
mom. So I want to hear from your perspective. What is it really like working with family?
I think in a lot of ways, it does actually make things easier because oftentimes you can get to that final conclusion a little quicker. There's no real tiptoeing. We don't have to do the dance of I don't want to hurt your feelings or anything because, well, blood is thicker than water. We be hanging out with each other until the end of our days. So there's not ever going to be a time where, even in the most heated moments where we're not going to end up with like, all right, well, that's fine. We'll work on this and, maybe we'll catch back up with this tomorrow, or maybe we need to take some time to really think about things. But like I said earlier, the train is moving in one direction. We're all on it. And for us, we see that and we know that no matter what, both of us are trying to make sure that this is something that is going to be successful, something that is going to be fun for me, because I get to be the host, and also our audience and then our guests. So I think while it is tough at times working with family because you can get to that ceiling a little quicker sometimes of like
We're passionate people.
Yes, very passionate. We're Sagittarius, and so we are a fiery bunch. But I think it does allow things to resolve and come to those conclusions a little quicker. There's not a lot of that back and forth. We're like, I kind of want to say something here. We don't have to do that. We can just say what we want to say.
It's true. It's often a gift and a
Mm.
challenge. And you and I have been working together now for many years, and our working relationship has evolved over the years.
Yeah.
Our the way that we work together has evolved, and we've learned how to respect each other's opinions, give each other the space that's needed. We've also gotten comfortable with being okay with having differing opinions,
Yeah. Yeah.
and knowing that it's valuable to have different perspectives, and that ultimately that's what leads to greater success for the organization and our team, because we come to something with different opinions, different ideas, different goals.
Yeah.
But we are a work in progress.
As a every relationship is a work in
Hmm.
progress, right? Just like we would never want to stop learning in life. We never want to
Yes.
stop working towards a better working relationship, better family relationship, and those
Hmm.
things.
So let's go back to those early days of TTC.
Ooh,
Can
okay.
you recall what your first job for the company was, whether
Yes.
that was official or
I don't
not so official?
I think it was we were on the up and ups, right? No, I started doing work for TTC, working with one particular client, which was Bank of America. I was doing a lot of maintenance work, so a lot of at that time, everything was still in person training, very much so in person training. So we would have facilitator guides and participant guides that the client would print out literally thousands of copies of these things, and then send them all across the country to learners in various portions of the country. So, uh, so my first job was to go through and do little tiny changes. So little word change here, find and replace, making sure that the headings were accurate on things. So that was my first taste as a very pseudo instructional designer, was to go through and do that kind of quality assurance type of thing. We
Hmm.
have actual professionals now within the company that are quality assurance folks, and they are fantastic.
So
But
good at what they do.
yeah, but as a
Shout out Tambra.
that's right, Tambra. But as like a 15-year-old who needed a little extra cash on the side, it was a great experience, and how to work and the tools that I use every day now. So Excel, Word, PowerPoint, not so much PowerPoint now, but Word and Excel. It was a great foray into that, and really, trying to be professional and even in that small role. At the time I was also working in retail, at a sporting goods store. So it was a much different experience working, well, from home and on a computer, and it's invaluable experience that I utilize to this day.
Yeah, good exposure from early on, and you've continued to gain more and more and find yourself in various pockets of the organization over the years as we've grown.
I like to keep things fluid for myself.
Hmm.
You don't want to get stale in your career, right?
Sure, switch it up. Absolutely. I'd love to know what your goals are for this podcast.
Ooh,
I know them, but
yeah.
I think it'd be fun for our listeners to hear where you're hoping for this to go.
I think the main goal that I have, which is similar to when I'm working on voiceover stuff or when I was working on maintenance, is that in those instances, to me, it's all about the learner. While I want to empower the client and allow them to make more efficiencies within their processes, I want to make sure that we're setting up the learner for success. And so, to me, it's similar in this, which it would be the listener. So whether that person is, maybe in like higher education, they're looking to get into adult learning and the corporate learning sphere. How do we get them from that, from that dream of moving into the corporate world and take it from that dream to really jumping into the deep end and moving forward with their career, or whether that's a seasoned senior instructional designer that just wants to learn more about what's new. I want to. My goal is to give these folks the latest and greatest of what's going on in the world of L&D and showcase the story side of it so that they can see that it's not just these all these guests that we've had on here, they didn't just waltz right in and find success at the beginning. It was a long journey, and I want to showcase that journey, as well as showcase some of the tools that they've used or some of the things that they've learned along that journey. So that would be my biggest goal. Obviously getting to 100,000 downloads a month would be awesome. Let's go. Please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. But the real goal is that even if we only touch one individual and give them the confidence that they need to move on into a new career or expand their current career, that would be success in my mind.
And anything from an experience standpoint, you and I were chatting about possibly some fun live events or live recordings that we could do.
My goal on that side is to be able to, we talked a little bit about some of the speaker circuit and some of the really fun events that are held for the world of L&D. Would be going to as many as possible with maybe a camera person to hold the camera while I do a little man on the street type of thing. But being able to connect with folks outside of the studio. I love being in the studio. It's great, but I also love to travel and love to meet new people. So that would be a really fun experience, and I think real opportunity for us to expand as well as just find new voices out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Stay tuned. All right, so I thought it would be fun to kind of move into a bit of a rapid fire question section. Okay. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and the challenge is for you to answer quickly, just the first response that comes to mind in just a few words.
Okay.
So we're going to go through them pretty quick.
Whew, let's go.
All right, what's the best thing that's happened to you this week?
The best thing that happened to me this week was that I made some of the best clam chowder that I've ever made. And was able to eat that for like 3 days straight. That was by far the top end of my of my week.
What's your favorite thing about your job?
Talking to people. I just love the opportunity to talk to folks and listen to their stories and have fun with them.
That comes out in each episode. It really does. What's your biggest fear?
Spiders. I really don't like spiders.
Not cicadas?
We don't have cicadas up here, which is one of the reasons I moved here. No, I'm kidding.
I'm recalling a rather cruel incident of our childhood where I tossed a cicada at Doug. I knew he was afraid of them.
No, I'm not a huge insect fan. Cicadas are obviously the scariest flying thing that God created. And I can't stand them, but spiders are more prevalent, and I see them every day up here.
Spooky. You get that from our dad.
Yeah.
What's the most important lesson you've learned in life?
Never stop learning. You could think that you're an expert in some things, but chances are someone has found a new innovation within whatever that could be, whether that's how to mix someone's audio, or whether that's how to make a better loaf of sourdough, or whether that's how to, start a new hobby and get better at hobbies. There's always something that you can learn. So I would say never stop learning.
Wise words. Learning is the ultimate human experience, truly. What's the best compliment you've ever received?
That my hair is soft. You're
striving for it.
Look, you should have seen me when I was I don't know, 18, 19, and I didn't know how to
I
take
did.
care of hair. I mean, you were there. So you know the poofy, the cloud that used to hang above my head
Yeah,
when I grew my
you
hair out.
truly resembled someone from Led Zeppelin back in the day. We've got to find a picture
Oh,
and
we'll put
drop it
in,
on social
yeah, we'll
media.
put it in the social. We'll do a clip. I'll find my worst instance of having cloudy hair. It was before I knew that product was a thing that you could constantly use, and yeah. Anyway, so
To
the first time that
maintain.
someone was like, "Oh, your hair is soft," I was like, "Really?"
What's your favorite piece of clothing?
Black tank top. I'm a big fan of
I could have guessed that.
yeah, I'm a big fan of comfort. So I also run very hot, which is why it's perfect that I live up here and evidently it snows even midway through May. But yeah, black tank top and black pair of jeans. You'll find me in that any given day of the year.
What's your favorite holiday tradition?
Ooh, you know, this has changed a lot over the years, but I think now that I've really gotten into cooking over the last 10, 15 years, I think making a Thanksgiving turkey is one of the funnest things that I do during the year, just because it's such a long process of doing like the turkey brine. Alton Brown, you're my man,
Mm.
and doing that because especially for Emily's pops, he is not a cook, but he does love good food. So it's really nice to be able to make like a full Thanksgiving meal for someone who's not like a major cook or anything, and really kind of just splurge on them and give them a really nice home cooked meal.
Definitely a fun way to show your love. What's the one thing you want to be remembered for?
Oh, wow. Jeez. Hopefully my laugh. I love laughing. We have an uncle, Mike, who I've always thought his laugh was not only the most hilarious thing I've ever heard, but very impactful. Like when you know
Mm.
that he's there because you can hear his laughter, I always felt like he was able to really brighten a room with his laughter. So I've always tried to make sure that laughing was a part of my personality, because I do, you got to find things funny in life. Things are funny, so might as well laugh.
Couldn't agree more. All right, last one. I heard this the other day and I really liked it. What's one thing that your 8-year-old self would be happy to know that you still do?
Sing.
Mm.
I was always a singer as a kid. I didn't think about it that much when I was a kid, but all the adults in my life were always like, "Yeah, I heard you singing in the shower today," or "Heard you singing in the bathroom." Uh, and yeah, I never thought about it until I got a little older and I started getting really into music and making music. Was that yeah, singing is a huge part of my life, and it's one of the things that gives me true joy, is to be able to belt out a song whenever I'm feeling blue, whenever I'm feeling happy, whenever. Yeah.
And you have such a gift for it.
Oh, thanks. We'll do someday. We'll do like a talent show type of thing for TTC.
Ooh, TTC's got talent.
Yes, yes, yes. We got to get it approved by HR first, but we're doing it.
Sounds like a lot of fun. I will definitely stay tuned for that one.
Okay. Well, you got to join too. You're gonna be in the talent show.
I will choose tumbling. That will be
All
my
right,
talent,
perfect.
not singing.
All right.
All right, Doug. Well, those were all my questions that I had for you today. Thanks
Awesome.
so much for being a sport and
Of course.
letting me take over the mic and turn the tables on you. It
I
was
like
really
it.
fun to get to know more about your perspective. And it's funny because I feel as if I know all there is to know about you, but I definitely learned some new things today. So thanks for sharing.
Of course. We'll have to do these again. I love these little insights on the world that don't always have to do with the work. A lot of this was just about us as people and
Mhm.
and that. So I think this is really fun. Thanks for jumping in as the host.
Happy to. So, if y'all listening have any other questions that you'd love for Doug to answer on anything personal, podcast, voiceovers, anything at all, sourdough, let us know. You can give us a comment on social media. We are at ttcInnovations, and we're happy to do another episode like this and soon.
Thanks so much for joining us this week. Remember to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to sign up for our newsletter, The Buzz, to keep up with all things L&D. See you next time.